Inside this tree, an exit has become a trap. This tiny chamber is home to 2 wasps, but only one of them is meant to survive here. She is not searching for food, she is searching for the host that will carry her next generation. With one tiny egg, a new life begins inside a host that does not know it has been chosen. Hidden from the outside world, the larva begins growing at the expense of its living host. 2 lives are unfolding in the same chamber, but only one will eventually leave it. The host begins to dig its way out, unknowingly preparing the parasite's final escape. The doorway that should have led to freedom is now too small for the host to pass. The parasite has reached the final barrier. The host itself has become the door. Using the opening created by its host, the mature parasite finally reaches the outside world. Barely 2 millimeters long, this tiny wasp has survived a journey through another animal's body. Escaping the crypt was only the first challenge. Now she must find the place where the cycle can begin again. Somewhere beneath this bark is the next host, hidden inside a chamber no larger than a grain of sand. Only a thin wall of living oak separates the parasite from its next victim. Hidden once again inside the oak, the next generation has already begun. The egg has become a larva, and now the hidden relationship becomes one of survival. The host carries on with its life, unaware that another life is growing beside it. As the parasite grows, the balance inside the crypt begins to change. But exactly how it all... Controlled by the parasite, the host begins an impossible task. It must carve an exit it will... The opening is just large enough for its head, but too small for the body behind it. The host's head has become a living plug, blocking the only doorway to the outside. The parasite has reached the barrier, and the host's own body is now standing between it and freedom. Through a doorway created by its host, the adult wasp finally steps into the open world. Free at last, this 2 millimeter survivor still has one task left: begin the cycle again. Somewhere inside this enormous tree, another host is waiting. Above the bark, she has found her target. Below it, the host has no idea she is there. One tiny wasp disappears, another begins. Across the woodland, an invisible world is unfolding beneath the bark. To the gall wasp, this tiny chamber is not a prison, it is home. Protection comes at a price. Every hidden host exists inside a world filled with creatures searching for the same shelter. Somehow, she can locate a host hidden beneath living wood, but the precise cues she follows are still being investigated. Between the parasite and its target is a barrier of living wood. The host cannot see its enemy. The predator is already on the other side of the wall. Nothing appears to change, yet the host's fate has already been altered. For a while, life continues almost normally, while the parasite grows in silence. As the parasite develops, the host's behavior begins to change, but scientists still cannot fully explain how. Driven toward the surface, the host begins building the doorway that will eventually become its trap. Then the escape fails, and the host becomes the very barrier that the parasite needs. The parasite does not need to build a door, the host has already become one. And through that living doorway, the parasite finally escapes. Outside the crypt, freedom comes with a new danger. The world is enormous, and she is almost invisible. For an adult that may have only a brief window to reproduce, finding a mate is as important. After mating, there is no time to waste. The next host must be found. Not every crypt will do. The parasite must find the right host before the next generation can begin. Another egg disappears beneath the bark, and another generation enters the hidden world. Hidden beneath the bark, another generation is already beginning. While the host continues living inside its tiny chamber, the parasite quietly takes what it needs to grow. Now the strangest behavior begins. The host repeatedly returns to the same wall, as if one final scrape breaks the barrier, and the outside world suddenly enters the crypt. Again, the host becomes trapped at the exit, turning its own body into a living lock. Behind the trapped host, the parasite begins the final journey from darkness into daylight. Another parasite has escaped, and the cycle that began inside the oak is ready to begin again. Only a few millimeters long, the Crypt-Keeper Wasp reveals how much complexity can exist inside a space too small for us to notice. Nothing about her is enormous or powerful. Her advantage is specialization. Without this tiny host and the chamber it occupies, the Crypt-Keeper Wasp's remarkable life cycle could not happen. Evolution does not need to create the largest predator. Sometimes it creates an organism perfectly matched to one extraordinary opportunity. A predator needs its prey as food. A parasitoid needs its host as a living environment for development. At only a few millimeters long, this entire drama unfolds in a world smaller than most people ever notice.
An oak is not just a tree. At this scale, it is an entire landscape filled with hidden lives.
The strangest part of this story is not that the parasite escapes the crypt, but how perfectly the host's final exit becomes part of that escape. The host has spent its life building a home inside the oak. Now, at the final doorway, its own body becomes the key to another creature's escape. Through an opening barely large enough for its body, the adult finally crosses from darkness into daylight. Outside the crypt, the world suddenly becomes enormous. For a creature only a few millimeters long, even the bark is a landscape. She has escaped the crypt, found the open world, and now the search begins again. One precise choice is enough to begin another generation. Inside a space smaller than a grain of sand, an entire story can unfold without us ever seeing it. Sometimes the most extraordinary worlds are the ones hiding in plain sight. After everything we have seen, one question remains. How can something this small produce a life cycle this extraordinary? The secret is not a single trick. It is specialization. A tiny body, a specific host, a protected crypt, and a life cycle built around.
To us, it is almost invisible. To the parasite, this tiny patch of oak is an entire universe.
From a hidden crypt to the open forest, one extraordinary life cycle comes full circle, and beneath the bark, another is already beginning. 5 facts make this tiny wasp even stranger. 1. It's just a few millimeters long. 2. It grows inside another wasp. 3. The host. 4. The host's head blocks the exit. 5. How it does this is only the beginning. The mystery is not simply that the host changes, but how that change is produced. Nature documentaries often give mysteries a simple explanation. Science is more careful. We know what happens, but some of the most fascinating details are still unanswered. The Crypt-Keeper Wasp is extraordinary, but it belongs to a much larger world of parasitoids, organisms that have evolved countless ways to exploit the lives of other insects. A parasitoid may be tiny, but it is still part of a much larger network of interactions. For most of its life, the Crypt-Keeper Wasp exists somewhere we cannot see. The bark looks silent, while an entire biological drama unfolds underneath. To understand a creature that spends much of its life hidden inside wood, scientists have to combine field observation with increasingly powerful views of the microscopic world. When we see an adult wasp flying through the forest, we are seeing only the most visible moment of a life that spent much of its development completely hidden. If one tiny wasp can hide an entire biological drama inside an oak, how many other stories are still waiting beneath the bark? 3 things make this wasp extraordinary. First, its world is almost invisible. Second, development happens inside a hidden crypt. And third, its escape is built around its host. Not one trick. Every stage connects to the next. The host, the crypt, the exit, and the parasite form one life cycle. Every stage connects. Nature doesn't need to be exaggerated to be extraordinary. Some of the strangest stories are already documented in the real world.
At the beginning, we saw only a tiny insect and an ordinary piece of oak. Now we know that beneath that bark, an entire world was unfolding. Remember the Crypt-Keeper Wasp not because it is large, powerful, or dangerous. Remember it because an animal only a few millimeters long can live an entire life.
Nature keeps its secrets in places we rarely think to look. Before another generation can begin, the adult female faces a problem hidden from our eyes. She must find the right host inside the wood. For the next generation to survive, the female must place it where the biology of the host and the crypt can support its development. While the forest outside continues unchanged, another generation has already begun inside the crypt. The story is repeating, but never in exactly the same way. Some parts of this story can be watched directly. Others happen inside hidden chambers, so scientists have to reconstruct them from observations. We can observe the behavior, we can observe the parasite, but explaining exactly how every step of this strange occurs is a much harder scientific problem. From the outside, almost nothing happens. Inside the crypt, an entire escape is taking place. Escaping the crypt is not the end of the journey. An adult must find a mate, and the female must eventually locate another suitable host.
For an insect only a few millimeters long, finding one suitable host inside an enormous oak is a remarkable search problem.
Outside the crypt, almost nothing appears to change. Inside, an entire generation is moving toward adulthood.
After developing inside the hidden chamber, the next generation reaches the same threshold, darkness behind it and the forest ahead.
The moment it leaves the crypt, the parasite enters a world thousands of times larger than the chamber where it developed. To us, the forest is enormous. To this tiny parasitoid, the mission is much simpler. Find one suitable host.
Evolution does not always reward flexibility. Sometimes, survival comes from becoming extraordinarily good at one very specific way of life.
Extreme specialization has a price. The more precisely an organism fits one environment, the more dependent its life can become on that. Inside an oak, a tiny host builds a doorway. Behind it, a parasite waits. The host reaches the exit, the parasite follows. One adult escapes, it searches for another, and the cycle begins again.